Who remembers the song? Yeah. It actually came out in 1969, which is now a long time ago. It is one of my favourite songs. But in so many ways, it really just sums up what the gospel is all about today. And I could just about go to and sit down and let you just think on those words, but I will continue. In its simplest term, the gospel today, and so many of our gospels, are stories of love, of God's love for us, no matter who we are or what we have done. And a story I think that so many people need to take to heart right now. The other day I was reading an article by Adam Russell Taylor from Sojourners, and in it he was saying that the church needs to be three things for the world: a bridge, a balm, and a beacon. A bridge to bring people together, a balm for healing, and a beacon to show the way. And I think the story of Zacchaeus demonstrates all three of these things. Now the story is quite a familiar one, but actually we don't hear it very often, because Ordinary Sunday 31, which is today, often coincides with All Saints' Day. And Margaret actually gave me the choice of which I did, and I decided to go for Zacchaeus because it's a long time since, I think it was back in 95 that I preached on Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus was a tax collector, and a chief tax collector at that, which means he was probably very, very rich and really, really despised. He was short, not just in physical stature, but also in terms of his moral standing among his neighbours. And today, if it were happening, there probably would have been a whole lot of protesters around his tree with placards, calling him names, telling him to get down and get lost and all that sort of thing, condemning him on Twitter and so on. But there he was, up this tree, trying to get a glimpse of Jesus, this man that he'd probably heard quite a bit about. And what was Jesus' response? Well, not what you'd expect, and certainly not what the people of the time expected. Jesus didn't shun Zacchaeus. He didn't tell him off. He didn't just give him a casual wave and wander on. Instead, he invited himself to lunch at Zacchaeus' house. And no doubt there were many there who would have been really affronted and horrified by this. And again, if it were today, no doubt there would have been lots of comments on social media or on the news or in the papers. Jesus reached out to this man. He provided a way for him to be welcomed into the community. He became a bridge. He sat at table and listened and talked with the man. And for someone who was an outcast and greatly despised, maybe feeling very low, this must have been a real time of healing. Jesus provided the balm. And Jesus ignored the expectations of the crowd and demonstrated to them and all his followers the need for love and forgiveness. He was a beacon for the people of his time and for us today. We live in an angry, polarised world. There is so much that needs to be fixed, so many good causes, and so many people desperate for change. But the changes seem to be so slow in coming. And I wonder if part of the problem is that we have yet to find a way that we can all really work together. Adam Russell Taylor, in that article I mentioned, said, one of the most powerful antidotes to toxic polarisation is a common vision of the future. And churches can use this vision to align people with different political views with a common goal, bridging the gap between what is and what ought to be. And he added further on, greater civility is desperately needed in a time in which our politics is so often characterised by contempt and vitriol. Civility does not signal weakness, particularly when we are firm about our core values and convictions. Now, he was talking about politics in the United States, and I think they are really in a bad state there. But sadly, politics in Australia is not much different, and I worry that it is heading that same way. Jesus demonstrated again and again and again the way of unconditional love. A love that, as Paul described, is patient, kind, not arrogant, not rude. A love that will reach out to all, no matter who they are or what they have done. Unconditional love. It is so important and so necessary in our world today if we are going to heal many of the world's problems. John Powell once wrote a book called Unconditional Love, and actually I saw 2 copies of it on the table on Friday in the hall. And in the book, he tells a moving story of a young man and his search for God. And I want to share that with you. He wrote, "Some 12 years ago, I stood watching my university students file into the classrooms for our first session in the theology of faith. That was the day I first saw Tommy. Tommy turned out to be the atheist in residence in my theology course. He constantly objected to, smirked at, or whined about the possibility of an unconditionally loving God." John Powell says, "We lived with each other in relative peace for 1 semester, though I admit he was for me at times a serious pain in the back pew. And when he came up at the end of the course to turn in his final exam, he asked in a slightly cynical tone, 'Do you think I'll ever find God?' John Powell said, 'I decided instantly on a little shock therapy. 'No,' I said very emphatically. 'Oh,' he responded, 'I thought that was the product you were pushing.' I let him get 5 steps from the door and then called out, 'Tommy, I don't think you'll ever find him, but I am absolutely certain that he will find you.' He shrugged a little and left my class and my life temporarily. I felt slightly disappointed at the thought that he had missed my clever line. Then one day, quite some time later, Tommy came back to John Powell's office. He was sick, cancer in both lungs and only weeks to live. 'What I came to see you about,' Tommy said, 'is something you said to me on the last day of class. I asked you if you thought I would ever find God, and you said no, which surprised me. But then you said, but he will find you.' I thought about that a lot, even though my search for God was hardly intense at that time. But when the doctors removed a lump from my groin and told me it was malignant, then I got serious about locating God. But God did not come out. In fact, nothing happened. Did you ever try anything for a long time with a great effort and with no success? You get fed up with trying, and then you quit. Well, one day I woke up, and instead of throwing a few more futile appeals over that high brick wall to a God who may or may not be there, I just quit. I decided that I didn't really care about God and about an afterlife or anything like that. I decided to spend what time I had left doing something more profitable. I thought about you and your class, and I remembered something else you had said. You said the essential sadness is to go through life without loving. But it would almost be equally sad to go through life and leave this world without ever telling those you loved that you had loved them. So Tommy approached his dad and said, "Dad, I love you. I just wanted you to know that." His dad did two things Tommy could never remember him doing before. He cried and he hugged him. And they talked all night. "It felt so good to be close to my father," Tommy said, "to hear him say that he loved me." It was easy with my mother and little brother. They cried with me too, and we hugged each other. We shared the things that we had been keeping secret for so many years. I was only sorry about one thing, that I had waited so long. Here I was in the shadow of death, and I was just beginning to open up to all the people I had actually been close to. And then one day I turned around and God was there. He didn't come to me when I pleaded with him. I guess I was like an animal trainer holding out a hoop. Apparently God does things in his own way and at his own hour. But the important thing was he was there. He found me. You were right. He found me even after I stopped looking for him. What Tommy was saying was that the surest way to find God was not to make him a private possession, a problem solver, or an instant consolation in time of need, but rather by opening to love. And that is what the world needs today. And that was what Tommy said to John Powell at the time. "I'm not going to be around for much longer, but can you tell the world that this is what's so important, that love is what is needed?" And John Taylor put it in his book, and now I'm going to I know I'm sharing it with you again. Unconditional love. That is the only way we are going to solve things, because by love we can be a balm, a bridge and a beacon. We can bring people together. We can work together, not at odds with each other. When you're down and out, when you're on the street, when evening falls so hard, I will comfort you. I'll take your part. Oh, when darkness comes and pain is all around, like a bridge over troubled water, I will lay me down. Like a bridge over troubled water, I will lay me down. Amen.